And we welcome you to this edition of Night Shift. I'm Eric Lopez. As coming up, we'll talk about UCF's football's 49-17 win over UConn to improve to 7-4 on the season. We'll look ahead to their matchup against South Florida. We're going to also talk some other UCF sports. UCF Men's Basketball with a 75-59 win against Evansville on Saturday to start 4-0 on the season. Plus, we'll get to your comments and questions. Of course, make sure you follow us on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe and like us on our YouTube page, as well as like us on our Facebook page. Of course, you go to blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest at UCF sports. We cover them all. We're at every sporting event as possible. Football, basketball, you name it, we're there. We got a big staff to cover it all. And make sure, again, you subscribe and like. We'll have tons of videos of all the UCF sports, press conferences, and live shows like Night Shift, as well as we're on after each football game. And so let's begin here with football. UCF 49-17 victorious over UConn. A really fast start for UCF, 21-0 in the first quarter. Never really was threatened against the UConn team that, quite frankly, is more like an FCS team. And really, UCF did what they kind of wanted to do. I know there were some lulls. They didn't score in the third quarter, but I don't really take too much into that because, again, the opponent is what it is. You're going to have kind of ups and downs when you play these type of teams. You just want to get through it. I think the positives are that I don't believe you had any significant – I don't see any injuries. I don't believe you have any, which is the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing about these type of games I always worry about is, do you have some injuries that you'll worry about that you come out of these games? And certainly this team has had more than plenty of injuries this season. So at least it appears you come out of this game with no further injuries. You didn't have to burn a ton of your guys. I think that's a big plus in the big landscape here. As I look through the stats, UCF 537 total yards, UConn 311. UCF obviously over 500 yards of offense, really good. 4 of 11 on third downs. They were 1 for 4 at one point, but then they did okay. They held UConn to 4 for 17. UConn went 2 for 4 on fourth down. So if you include that, 6 for 21 for UConn on third and fourth downs. UCF 5 for 12 if you include the fourth downs. UCF averaged 8 yards a play. UConn averaged about 4 yards a play in total. Some individual stats: Mikey Keene, 23 of 29, 208 yards passing, 2 touchdowns in the game. He also ran 4 times for 33 yards and a touchdown in the ball game. Johnny Richardson leading the way, 14 carries, 147 yards and a touchdown in the ball game. Parker Navarro kind of playing that Joey Gatewood role that people haven't liked. Well, it's funny how it looks when it actually works. And Parker Navarro, 2 weeks in a row, has rushed for a touchdown. He had 41 yards on 3 carries. So Parker Navarro clearly has taken over that role. Joey Gatewood did come in relief at the end of the game, went 0 for 2 in the game. How about Ryan O'Keefe with a touchdown pass of himself in this ball game? So UCF kind of did what they had to do offensively. O'Keefe, 9 receptions for 56 yards. Brian Johnson, 7 catches for a $125 and a touchdown in the ball game. So UCF did what they had to do offensively. They were victorious very comfortably in this game by a score of 49-17. And let's see, we're going to get your comments here. We're going to get them going. In fact, let's get Mike Doty. Good to see you back, sir. Parker Navarro had more rushing touchdowns than Joey Gatewood at UCF, and Ryan O'Keefe has more passing touchdowns than Joey Gatewood. Go figure. Not sure if we would have had that in a parlay earlier this season, but that's what exactly happened. He also mentions, funny how people like it when the players doing it is good. There you go. So there's some early comments. We will read off some of your questions and comments there. Joining me now, My good buddy, Bryson Turner, who was going to go to the football game and then decided not to go to the football game. Is that correct?
Yeah. After going to the volleyball game last night and handling that, I was writing the article for it, which will be up on the banneret as soon as it can be. So stay tuned for that. But between writing that, making sure I'm here on the show tonight, and the life of being a UCF student also, I figured I just need to make sure I uncomplicated my day and not go to the game.
Don't worry. From what I saw in the photos, a lot of people skipped the game too, so don't worry about it. That's good.
Yeah.
Look. Here's the thing. Here's my thought on this. Okay, this is an example. This is why games like this will not draw. I don't blame the fans for this. This is why I think Terry Mahadger's alluded to it. I think you're going to see better scheduling. Now, keep in mind, this is a unique situation. You needed to fill a slot. They filled it. It was in November. It's a bye, basically before the short week here. So that's fine. Once they get into Big 12 football here, Bryson, this will end. You're not going to be able to play non-conference games in November. The Big 12, they usually go conference game straight up through November. So this was a unique case. I hope this is the last time we ever see UConn in football. Personally, I've been on record of saying I don't think UConn should even have a football program. I don't understand what they're doing. They left the American. They're an independent in football, which is not going to be successful for them. But with all that being said, the game has to be played, and I think UCF did what they had to do and get this game done. What jumped out to you?
Well, I will say on your point about UConn not having a football program is that the fact that they managed to hire Jim Mora, I think, says that
Jim Mora Jr., by the way, for the record.
Right. They're at least attempting to do something with it.
Yeah, good luck with all that.
Now, my personal belief with it, though, is that Mora might be kind of if Mora doesn't work, then I don't know if this program's ever going to work.
I don't think it's going to work. Jim Mora, he was not successful at UCLA, which has recruits and talent in California. Let alone now you're going to try to get players to come to Storrs, Connecticut. Look, that's a basketball school anyway. I've been up there. I've literally been up to Storrs, Connecticut. Nobody cares about football up there except the Giants or Patriots in the NFL.
Yeah. All right. But as far as what stuck out to me in this game, obviously, things clicked pretty well offensively. I don't know if stat boy Andrew Glukov is going to be here on the show, but I actually
He's going to be
all right, got it. Well, is that I actually managed to get very close to what the final score was going to be. I thought the final score was going to be 45-17. Ended up being 49-17. So pretty close on that front. But I think what honestly stuck out to me, though, and obviously because it's a win, it might get a little bit masked. You look at UConn's receivers and look how much success that their tight end Jay Rose had, because he was targeted 10 times, caught it all 10 times for 89 yards, which was by far the leading receiver for UConn. The only other player that had anywhere near that number of yards was Nate Carter, and that was just because he had that 47-yard catch. Pretty much no other UConn receiver could do anything except for Rose. What this kind of tells me is that this team is missing Bryson Armstrong. I mean, this is the
he was a great
Armstrong would be very
playmaker for them defensively at linebacker. Right. Now, that makes a ton of sense. And look, they're gonna face a playmaker at quarterback next weekend at South Florida. And I know some people are wondering, well, what does this performance do? South Florida got blown out by Tulane. I don't care. That's a rivalry. This is going to be a rivalry. There's going to be a lot of emotion. It's a big game for South Florida. They're trying to get something positive. Their defense has been terrible. But you're right. They gave up some plays there. But again, UConn is inferior. This game was over by the first quarter. I don't expect the team to just play at the top of their level from, the first quarter to the fourth quarter in games like this. But your point is valid in that I think that's something to monitor going into the South Florida game there. As Fallen Hero, the base legend, chiming in. Imagine if we get Florida in a bowl game. They just lost to Missouri in overtime, didn't they? They're not even a guarantee to make a bowl game for Florida. So we don't even know what they'll see. Now, Fallen Hero is asking, who do you want for UCF to play in a bowl game? And, those are tricky, right? Like, we're going to have a bowl projections every week. Drew Glukov will be on top of it. the thing about the bowl games is you're not going to get the matchups you want, right? Like UCF against Florida. Yeah, UCF fans would like to see that maybe in Birmingham, maybe play Tennessee in Birmingham. But the odds are that the other teams aren't going to agree to that. So I just hope they go to a decent bowl. And I think this South Florida game coming up will tell the story. If the UCF can win this game against South Florida and go to 8-4, and you saw even Gus Malzahn, if you watched the Our Time episode this past week, even said that. Let's finish strong, go to 8-4. We'll go to a good bowl game. Now, what that is remains to be seen, but I think that's the bigger thing. I'm not big on the bowl, will they try to, they'll try to find, I think, a Power 5 opponent in a bowl game somewhere. I think that'll be UCF's goal. I kind of alluded to that in the bowl projections. So, for example, if they were to able to play a Virginia Tech or a Virginia, somebody like that in Tampa or maybe up in the Military Bowl up in that area, maybe I think that's what UCF will shoot for. We'll see if they're successful on that. Do you have a preference, Bryson, on a UCF opponent for the bowl game?
I would honestly, I'm not big on who it is unless it is if it's a Power 5, that's awesome. I would definitely prefer that. My biggest thing is I'd love it for it to be in the state of Florida if at all possible, because that would be really fun to go to. That said, I root for the best game. So if it means going into the Military Bowl for the best game, then so be it. So, but if I had to pick one, if Florida does get bowl eligible, they're not guaranteed it, but if they do get it, then I would be very interested to possibly see that matchup. I think it would be a very compelling one because certainly for how I guess the politics dynamics of Florida football. What's another good one? I don't know.
They may end up playing in the Casparilla. I mean, the bottom line is they let them figure all that out. By the way, Gus Malzahn in his press conference, according to Drew, who's at the press conference, says that Jean Baptiste was out due to targeting. Remember, he got called for targeting last week. So due to that targeting there last week against SMU. So he was out. They didn't really, so keep that in mind. He'll probably be back. He'll be back basically for South Florida.
They'll need
that one. And I think so. I know South Florida is bad. Look, if UCF was a healthy football team, I don't even worry about this game. I think UCF could name the score. But I do think USF has potential to move the ball. I don't know, Bryce, are you more confident now in the UCF offense based on today against Connecticut's performance here? I know because they did what they had to do, but it's UConn. I'm not going to say all of a sudden that this offense is all firing on all cylinders. In fact, they didn't score in the third quarter at all.
Yeah, I know. I would argue that the second half the team got a little bit lethargic because it is Connecticut, and I get it. It is what it is. But looking at the performance, Johnny Richardson is, of course, as explosive as ever. I think that hopefully he'll be able to do something. Mark Anthony Richards, though, the fact that he managed to power through the line to get to get the touchdown, I'm really hoping that this game might be able to have Gus Malzahn think, Isaiah Bowser's out. We don't really know if he's going to be healthy enough for the South Florida game. Why not have Mark Anthony Richards kind of take over that, bruiser back role so that way we can establish the run? Because if there's one thing that this team has not been able to do without Bowser, unless it's in this game because it's Connecticut, is establish the run. So to do that against USF, you need to do it somehow. And Johnny Richardson just is not that kind of quarterback. We've seen the type of running back. We've seen the type of running back that he is. And that is a speedy, pass catcher, that type of thing. And he relies a lot on his speed and pass catching ability. Richards could be that running back that Bowser normally is, where he's the one that you send up the gut. And the fact is that he showed us he could do that. Now, will he be successful against USF? I don't know, but it's better to have Richards at least try to do it than just try to see if you can use Richardson when using just Richardson hasn't really worked every time.
Well, I like the fact too, by the way, they didn't play Bowser. I know he was warming up, but you don't need him in this game. You might need him next week. But I think this is the other thing, Bryson. This team this coaching staff's got to evaluate what do they have coming back next year. So, for example, I don't expect, and this chimes in with the question. UCF guy has chimed in with the question: who do you expect to come back for next season? And, guys like Bowser, he's asking about and things like that. And I think it's a great question. I'm not convinced that Bowser will be back because, look, man, as a running back, you have a shelf life. You want at some point, you just go and want to get paid somewhere when you get hit. So this team has to find out do they have a starting quality running back on this roster right now? Is that player on the field? Is that guy Johnny Richardson? Is that guy Mark Anthony Richards? Is that guy Harvey who's been out for the year? Or do they have to go get somebody? Is that somebody in the recruiting class? I think all of this is being evaluated for this staff, and I alluded to this on the podcast. I think this coaching staff, Bryson, will be very aggressive in the transfer portal. They have a tremendous recruiting class coming in, potentially the highest rated recruiting class in the history of this program. That's a start, but in today's college athletics, with the transfer portal, that's an area where you could plug in some holes, and I think UCF will be aggressive in filling those holes that they don't fill in their class recruiting in that transfer portal. The question is, what are those areas, and is running back one of them? I don't know if that's the case or not, but I think that's part of this process, Bryson, is to figure out who is part of this team, who can be a big part of this team next year, and which areas need to be addressed.
I think another big question about who will be back and just years of eligibility are concerned is that, considering how many people have fell to injuries and serious injuries at that, I really feel like we have to double check who could maybe fall under a medical red shirt, because Dylan Gabriel's been gone a while. Flash Robinson's been gone for a good amount of time. Kalia Davis. I mean, I have to double check how much of the season you'd have to play to be eligible for the medical red shirt. But that's another point to evaluate, especially with the team as rattled with injuries as this one is been.
Sure, right. And then we'll see if some of them even decide to use it and come back or not. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel did not dress in this game. And to be honest with you now, Bryson, I'm kind of skeptical we're going to see him at all. I was one that thought, oh, he'll be back. I'm not sure about that moving forward as far as the rest of the season. I mean, he didn't even dress today. Can you really bring him in cold against South Florida? Maybe you dress him and have him as a backup at best going to the South Florida game. But I kind of believe now that Mikey Keene's going to start the South Florida game. And I'm not one, by the way, that believes if he doesn't play the South Florida game, I don't believe in playing him in the bowl game. And I'm talking about Dylan Gabriel at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Dylan Gabriel actually didn't use his red shirt period. So if that ends up being the case, then there is that to consider as well. So yeah, I'm not sure. The biggest thing for me, at least when you're looking at certain positions, wide receiver, I think we're pretty good with. Darryl Wyatt, he won our Banny for Assistant Coach of the Year for a reason, and he has a really good wide receiving core there. Titus Malala had some time to shine. We had Ryan O'Keefe. And, we have a good receiving core to go with, even if we lose Brandon Johnson. That's fine. I am completely confident with that. I'm also confident with Johnny Richardson. Johnny Richardson has some more years left in him, and I think for the role that he plays, he is excellent. Explosive, pass catcher, speed, excellent. Love him. The biggest hole that UCF will need to fill, with Bowser likely not coming back, is that bruiser back role. I think that because we saw how good they turned out with pairing Bowser and Richardson early in the season. And so I think that 1-2 punch of a bruiser back with Johnny Richardson will be a very deadly combination to have.
Yeah, Brandon Johnson's had a nice year. Leads him in touchdowns, double figures. He's been decent there as well. I don't know if everybody would agree with you that they're happy with the receiving core, but I do think the receiving core has been young. I think they've performed young. But we'll see who comes back and who doesn't, and they're going to add pieces to that.
Well, to those I say, I feel like that's a symptom of having a true freshman quarterback in Mikey Keene. I don't blame the receiving the core too much because Mike, they have to work with the quarterback. And when you make a quarterback change, especially to a true freshman, you're going to have a little bit of disconnect sometimes. So any issues, in my opinion, that come with the wide receivers normally come with a bit of just a bit of a disconnect with the quarterback, which if Dylan Gabriel comes back, that'll all get fixed. So look,
well, what if he doesn't? I mean, what if he doesn't? What if this is Mikey Keene's next year or whoever? I think that, now, even if Dylan doesn't come back, you'll have a full spring and more time to work together. A year of growth, I think, will help that core. But we'll see.
I'm looking at the seniors right now, and the big ones I'm looking at is we have to double check with Kalia Davis with medical red shirts and stuff. We have Big Cat Bryant, Brandon Johnson, Devontae Dawson, Bryson Armstrong. We have Cole Schneider and Samuel Jackson.
Cole Schneider is playing center today.
Yeah, two offensive
moving positions. Yeah.
I think that's that mainly has to do with just him getting some playing time. With I think Matt Lee is the center of the future. I think we're good.
Well, I don't think that's a question. It's just he's had to play some center because Lee's been banged up this year.
Right. We also have Anthony Montalvo and Derek Gaines. Isaiah Bowser's a senior. And then as far as redshirt juniors, notable redshirt juniors, which that there's the whole NFL talk about that. There's Jalen Robinson, Devon Wilson. I don't know who the NFL could possibly get from that. But that's always the possibility there because if they are ever get drafted or undrafted free agent, they're gone. So I would say, though, the biggest things that people would probably want to worry about are replenishing the offensive line. I think that'll be a big one. Get that bruiser back. The bruiser back is going to be huge. And then really it'll just be dependent, I think, on it'll just be dependent on, can this team also stay healthy? I think that's the other thing is you want to bring in people so that way you can really bolster your depth. And I think this season really shows the importance of doing that.
Hopefully. That's the hope, right? I mean, I think that's the hope that everybody has in this situation is that they could do that and build some depth here. So, we'll see what happens. Let's see if we could bring in here. Mikey Keene is speaking with the media, and I'm going to try to see if I could bring that up. And here's Mikey King, hopefully, here in a minute. Nope, we're not going to do it. No Mikey King. But anyway, so I think you're right. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this roster looks and what the evaluation will be like. Coseg advisor, a boy chiming in. Devon has had a good game. Happy for him. But Tatum is a beast. So those are Coseg advisor's comments on that one for this victory there. And 7 wins, by the way, for UCF. 7 wins.
Yeah. I would say that the UCF linebacker core is really, really good. Tatum Bethune and Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste are both extremely great, and they're both juniors, so they will likely be. So they'll be back. So they should be back next year. So I would say,
all right, let's go ahead,
Sean. But the linebackers look great.
All right, let's play a little bit of Mikey King right now, talking to the media.
Of him and just happy for what's happening for him because he's definitely worked for it and put the work in behind it.
How did Johnny's play today impact the work that you had to do on the field?
Johnny makes it a lot easier for me. I mean, he's explosive back, and he's explosive coming out of the backfield catching passes as well. He had that touchdown catch. But Johnny just adds another element to our offense that can get a quick play started with nothing. So he's just very electric, and, I mean, anyone would like that on their offense. So he's just very helpful.
Mike, you're talking about Parker again. Obviously, you guys probably would be close anyway. Same quarterback room, but you both are from Arizona. Are you maybe have a kinship that way, or being Arizona guys?
We relate. When I was here for my first time, a little bit homesick and things like that. And I could talk to him about things that I missed from back home, and we could relate with each other with things like that, people that we know. But honestly, we didn't really know each other until it was like 3 days before he left. We trained at the same Ignite Performance back home, and we actually got a workout in together. So it was super cool getting to work out with him. And then he was going to college, and I was getting ready to start my senior season. So a lot's changed since then. But no, Parker's a great guy.
I think this is your 7th or 8th start. How much more comfortable are you, since your first one? How have you grown?
I just have experience. I learned from the mistakes that I've made, and just the preparation throughout the week. It's probably the biggest factor, just understanding what I'm going to get, understanding how to handle situations better. Honestly, just learning from my mistakes is the biggest thing that I can take away, trying to limit turnovers. And that's the biggest thing, honestly.
Mike, you just mentioned next week being a big rivalry. I know you're not from the area, so you must have heard about it from teammates. What do you know about the war on I-4, and how important is it to this team to try to beat those guys from?
I've seen some clips from the 2017 year where UCF and USF were going back and forth at it. That was a crazy game with the kick return to end the game. So I watched highlights on that, and I just understand. Rivalry game is huge. This is our biggest rival, in my opinion. So I'm just super excited to be introduced to it and ready to get this thing rolling for next week.
Over the course of the season, how has your chemistry grown with Ryan and Brandon?
It's grown tremendously. Just we trust each other. We understand how we're going to play, and just getting that experience throughout games and things. Practice can be helpful, but just getting thrown out there in the game and trusting each other fully. They understand how to get open for me. I understand where to put the ball for them. So it's just become a great relationship with those guys.
Mike, you mentioned gaining experience and trying to learn from your mistakes and such like that. What can Mikey Keene today tell Mikey Keene before the first start? What's one thing you could tell him that could probably have done a lot to improve your performance quicker?
Just limiting turnovers, honestly, and especially in third down situations, third and long situations. I had a tendency when we're first starting out against Navy and East Carolina to try and do too much on third down and long, instead of taking the smart play, moving on to play the next down, and letting our defense get a stop and then getting the ball back and with good field position. But honestly, just limiting my third downs and just being efficient on third downs as well.
Do you feel the game's kind of slowed down for you, just throughout the starts that you've had?
Right. It's obviously going to slow down just as long as I keep going and getting these reps out there. So I just feel more comfortable with everything, and I've seen a lot more looks. I've gotten a lot more experiences. I've made a lot more mistakes. So I just can learn from all of those things, and it helps slow down the game. Yes, sir.
There's also
All right, that was Mikey Keene in the post-game. Knights victorious there. The young man handling the media there. We heard Drew asking questions. We heard Kyle Nash asking questions. We had Brandon Hellwig asking. I think we even had Trace, good buddy Trace, asking questions there. Any thoughts there on what Mikey had to say?
He's learned on the war on I-4. I'm proud of him there, that's for sure. And I really like how he really acknowledges how this is really a growth year for him. Regardless if Dylan Gabriel comes back or not, this development that Mikey Keene is going through can be sometimes very hard to go through sometimes, but it's very, very necessary. And so the mistakes that he's making now is just him learning so that way he won't make them in the future. And it's just a matter of just being patient with him and just letting him grow. And from what, from his media appearances, he's a very nice kid. And so I think that he really I think he'll be able to gain the respect of the team and be able to improve his play as he goes on. We just kind of have to let him do it. You're muted.
Fast Luck Style chimes in saying he is such a nice young man, Mikey. We are good no matter. So it looks like your Fast Luck Style is consoled on Mikey Keene. Cossack Advisor chiming in on the offensive line question with Lee and Medley returning possibly and Pioli, and then of course maybe Collins at tackle, maybe one more short. So that's going to be the big question. How many of those guys return? How many don't return? I think we'll tell the story about this offensive line. You hope you could bring some of them back, especially someone like Lee, some of the other guys. and have some depth there. It's just not how many you return, but how much depth do you have, I think will play a factor in all that. All right, we'll keep taking your questions on the football victory, but we still got more. We're still going to talk other UCF sports here. Coming up, we're going to be talking a little UCF basketball. They defeated Evansville on Saturday, 75-59. We also will talk a little other UCF sports going around campus, including volleyball. We have our first conference championship of the 21-22 athletic year at UCF. And, of course, with football season winding down, it also means we're that much closer to baseball and softball season. We'll give you a little taste of that. All coming up on this edition of Night Shift. Of course, you can subscribe to YouTube and make sure you obviously like all our content. And, of course, follow us at Black and Gold Banneret on our site, as well as like us on Facebook, where you can watch all of us and listen to this on your favorite podcast devices as well as our weekly podcast. All right, we'll get back to perhaps some football later on, and we'll still take your questions, so keep them coming in. As Fast Lex Styles wants to make a point. Well, no one replaces Dylan. Well, we'll see what happens with that situation down the road. Hopefully he does come back. If he doesn't, though, I think to Bryson's point, you have somebody that's got more experience that's played some snaps. But I want to talk a little hoops because I was watching UCF Evansville basketball on ESPN Plus. UCF victorious 75-59. Darren Green Jr. led the way with 17 points. He's averaging 16 points a game on the season. UCF won the rebounding battle by 9. They led at the half 39-30, and they kind of coasted, really did what they needed to do. They were very efficient offensively, shooting nearly 50% from the field. It is the third time in the last decade that UCF has started 4-0 on the season. Second time in the Johnny Dawkins era. They were 4-0 in 17-18 season. They will now take on Oklahoma at home on Saturday. That's a big one. That's after Black Friday. What a weekend with the Black Friday football game against South Florida on Friday, 3:30 kick. And then the basketball men's hoops game, home game against Oklahoma on Saturday. But a good win for UCF and a good start to the season, Bryson, for basketball.
Oh, yes, I would completely agree with you there. Anytime you can start a season undefeated like that is amazing. I'm looking at the stat sheet right now, like Darren Green, Darius Perry, certainly really good, doing really well. CJ Walker doing very well, 63% on field goals, which is great, really great. But honestly, one thing I've noticed, and he hasn't attempted as many shots, but Tyam Freeman is actually doing a fairly solid job, hitting 72% of his field goal percentage.
Scored 11 today off the bench, 7 in the first half. He's been an energy guy off the bench. He's been a pleasant surprise. Nobody really brought him up on media day. Nobody brought him up prior to the season, but he's a guy that has stepped in there and has given him some good minutes off the bench. Very athletic, very fast, and I think can create some havoc and has been produced today 11 points off the bench. Isaiah Adams, I thought, had his best, most efficient game of the season. That was another positive from the game. 8 points on 3 of 5 from the floor, 6 rebounds to lead the team. Much better performance after an 0-for-6 struggle against Jacksonville. And if they can get Isaiah Adams' offense going, which I think will come, this team could be really interesting offensively, could take it to the next level on this team. And that's the thing. This team has depth, and they've got some options. I think, to me, Darren Green is developing into a go-to guy. You mentioned Darius Perry had 15 points in the victory. That was very solid as well. And because of this depth, they're winning the battles off the bench. They outscored Evansville today 28-15 on Saturday in scoring off the bench. They're winning. They wore down Jacksonville in the last 4 minutes in that victory on Tuesday. And to me, I like the pieces here. Again, I still think they can get better. Couple concerns. CJ Walker and Jong not rebounding a ton, which kind of surprised me. CJ Walker did fall down awkwardly in the last 4 minutes of that game on his ankle, got up. Good sign he was moving around on the bench afterwards, so hopefully it wasn't too serious. But, look, man, it's a fun team to watch, and I hope, Bryson, that people come support this team. and starting this upcoming Saturday against Oklahoma, which is a big game. Oklahoma is kind of a rebuild year. Parker Moser is the Porter Moser, is the new head coach there. Of course, took Loyola of Chicago to the Final Four a couple years ago. Took him to the Elite Eight last season. Obviously, he's a very good coach, taking over for Lon Kruger, who retired. But this is a UCF team that's got a lot of depth, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
I would agree with that. Now, I have one concern looking at the stat sheet. So, what's been going on with Brandon Mahan? Because there was a lot of talk about him going into the season, but it seems like he's had a bit of a stumble out of the gate in terms of shooting. 27% field goal percentage. He's certainly gone beyond the arc a lot. 21% on those types of field goals. So what's up with Brandon Mahan?
He's a streaky player. We had Taylor Young on our podcast this past week. Really good in depth from Taylor Young, who's the radio analyst for UCF basketball now for over a decade. Former player. And he talked about it. And it's true. If you follow Brandon Mahan, he's got his streaks. He's very streaky player. There's games where he can light it up, score 30-plus points like he did against Florida State last year, and there's games where he struggles. Look at what happened in the Jacksonville game. He got hot in the last few minutes of that game, took it over. So I'm not – that's who he is. He's streaky, but I think that's a positive that UCF still – I think you get more production out of him and more production out of Adams, and they still look like a better offensive team, and that's without those two consistent production. I mean, Perry's playing much better than he did last year, Darius Perry. And obviously we've talked about Darren Green Jr. So if you can get Mahan and Adams going, this team offensively could be really, really tough to deal with a lot of versatility. And Kosek Advisor makes a great point, again, on the basketball front about Ty Freeman, who's a scorer. If offense stalls, Coach Dawkins can count on him to score hustle points, dribble, drive, shooting, and go to the rim. I agree. I mean, that's a piece I wasn't expecting, Bryson.
Yeah,
he's been amazing.
He seems like a pretty good six-man type player, I would think.
He absolutely is. And the other thing you've seen from this team is this team can play fast. Because they have depth, they got more. They're able to do more full court pressure defensively, because that's really the identity of this program is their defense. The difference is with this team and this depth, they have the ability to press these teams and wear them out. Plus, their free throw shooting has been solid to this point. But that's the thing. Isaiah, as I've mentioned, has struggled offensively, but is so improved defensively. He's a lockdown defender. Dre Fuller can defend. These guys can defend, and they take a lot of pride. And you got two guys in Walker and Jong who can protect the rim. So, and with Mayhem, I will say this. Yes, he's struggling from the field, but when he gets to the free throw line, he's pretty much close to automatic. I mean, think back to the Miami game. We went 10 for 10 at the line, 15 in that ball game in the victory against Miami. So I like the fact they're chipping in, and I think the ceiling is super high for this team as Coach Dawkins tries to figure out the puzzle each night as they play, and I think they will adapt based on the opponent and what they bring to the table.
You make some good points.
I'm fired up. Let's get some hoops.
It's still pretty early in the season, and forgive me, but if you guys have been following my nightcaps, you've noticed that basketball really hasn't been in my purview because I've been following up with cross country, golf, all these others, golf, soccer, and of course volleyball volleyball, who just clinched a share of the American Athletic Conference championship for the 4th year in a row.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that before this. So yeah, basketball. I'm getting my attention a bit, turning my attention to basketball, and I'm very impressed with what I see so far. I definitely agree with you that there's definitely room to improve there, especially with Brandon Mahan and Isaiah Adams. And I think, if you can get those two going, you combine that with Darius Perry, Ty Miller. I think that this is going to be a
Ty Freeman.
Going to be
is big. It's big.
Yep.
This team is deep. I mean, it's deep. It's very deep. They have options. So we'll see what happens. By the way, so I'm watching the game. ESPN Plus. It's an Evansville broadcast. You could tell it's kind of a student broadcast, which, hey, I came as a student broadcaster. And everybody knows I've made mistakes, and I'll continue to make mistakes from time to time on the air. However, Bryson, what I don't understand is you are a current student journalist. the student broadcaster over in that broadcast referred to UCF as the Golden Knights, which we have not been since 2007. My question is, do the young people not read game notes? Because specifically on the UCF game notes, it says they have not been Golden Knights since 2007. You know, alongside the, hey, we'd like to be referred to as UCF, et cetera, et cetera. I don't understand, Bryson. How does Golden Knights keep popping up? Is it because some people have thrown the idea about, well, it's because they're confused with the Vegas Golden Knights of the National Hockey League, that now that's back in everybody's mindset about Golden Knights. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it depends on who's saying it. In this case, I think it's the case of a fault behind the scenes, because I think that the game notes did not get to the could be a very possible the game notes did not get to the broadcaster, or at least not the full thing, or a full thing. Like maybe they didn't have the game notes and just did their own notes, which would not have had that note to call them the Golden Knights, because they did those notes on their own. That's very possible, especially since this is a student doing it. I know for me, I mean, I like to jot my own notes down. And also because, sometimes, I'm thinking about all sorts of different things, trying to make sure I get some fundamentals right. That sometimes, that sometimes things like that might just kind of slip my mind when I do that. So that's what I think what's happened in this particular case. But there are some people that are on the older side that probably would say Golden Knights just out of habit, because they would have used it before. I think that's very valid that Vegas Golden Knights is a term there. So I think that is also a possibility. But I would say it's really more along the lines of being a student. Sometimes things can sort of slip your mind. You can make some mistakes with the things that are more on the periphery, because you're trying to focus more on the fundamentals of the craft. And so I think that that's what this student broadcaster was focused on. And yes, it's a little bit annoying, but he's learning. That's what he's supposed to do. So I think that's just what was going on here.
Look at you. I like the fact you're defending your colleagues. I like that. I'm proud of you for doing that. Yeah, maybe it's just kind of weird, because it's not like a student thing. There's been a lot of people over the years on broadcast and articles that have brought up Golden Knights. It's kind of like, I don't get it. Like, it's there in the game notes. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe UCF on social media needs to remind people they're the Knights instead of worrying about fake trophies and promoting that. Yeah.
Well, I will say this. If there's one thing, because remember when Terry Mohajir came in, we were all talking about how he was on TikTok with his daughters. So
yes,
for me, it seems to me that Terry Mohajir is one of those people that would very much do something for the memes, as it were. And so I think that this trophy, which, let's face it, and because we are kind of guilty of this too, or at least we as the Banneret are guilty of this, is that there's a bit of mysticism around the missing trophy and the joke of it. That the joke sort of took on a life of its own and kind of became a bit of a meme. And so because Terry Mohajir, is aware of that side and I think would definitely be not opposed to do something for the memes, then doing this seems like something he would do. And to be honest, I got a little bit of a laugh out of it. Sure, it wasn't the original trophy. It's fine. But the whole point of this, it's just a joke. It's just kind of having some fun.
Well, I would say that's fine, but why we need to lower the standards? You're playing a program that doesn't even need to have football. Whatever. You all enjoy it, enjoy the laughs, the conflicts, but nobody's going to be laughing if you don't win the other trophy next week. That's the trophy. The World Trophy.
I agree. I agree. But the problem, the thing is that, again, because of UConn, being the program that it is, sometimes those things are able to help drum up interest. Like, you have to try to work with what you have. And we're still kind of in this period where Danny White's scheduling is still haunting us.
No question about that. You're right.
I would. So I mean, it's like, sure. Do we want to have to schedule programs like UConn all the time? No, big time no. But in the end, this is what we were left with, and we have to work with it. And so a marketing team's job is to just find a way to do it. And this is the way that they found. And I appreciate the fact that they kind of noticed how the trophy's kind of been a bit of a joke and a bit of a meme in the UCF community, and is using it. So it's just one of those things where where you have to kind of where UCF is able to understand its fan base, I guess, and that's one of the reasons why they're the brand that they are right now.
One trophy you don't have to worry that we can be proud of is the conference championship in volleyball. They locked up a share for the American Conference Championship Friday night as they destroyed Temple, swept them. They will have 2 matches left. They're at at Tulane on Wednesday, and then at Houston to close it out. They need 1 win to clinch the conference championship outright. They have at least a share. You were there in the building on Friday. This team playing at a very high level right now. Great accomplishment. 4th straight conference championship. At least have a share for this volleyball. And I know you're writing about it here on Black and Go Banneret. Just kind of give us your thoughts, a little bit of a tease without giving away too much of your article that's going to be coming out.
All right. So basically I have been, following this volleyball team throughout this season, and I can understand why this sport is becoming a revenue generating sport for some schools. And I really hope it gets to that point for UCF as well, because the atmosphere in the venue is absolutely electric. Like, especially when you get a lot of people in there, and especially with this team. I don't know if I've said it on air, but this team, all-around team, is one of the best all-around teams in this program's history since the 90s. The 90s. You have McKenna Melville, who's top 10 all-time in kills and digs. You have Amber Olsen, who's climbing up the list in all-time career assists. And then you have Narissa Moravec and Anne-Marie Watson, who are 2 of the 3 best blockers that this program has ever had. And then you have the young guns with Chloe Shear at libero, and just recently, head coach Todd Dagenet has been trying out freshman Caitlin Grimes at libero, and she just got 10 digs against Temple. So this team is absolutely insane, and it's been amazing to watch them this time. And watching them against Temple, it's like this is a conference champion. This is a conference champion team.
And they're a team that will certainly be in the NCAA tournament. As of we talked, their RPI unofficially dropped to 27. I mentioned this in the podcast this week. Look for their RPI to drop because South Florida and Temple are not very good. And so when you play those teams, 2 teams are going to hurt your schedule strength, and they're going to drop, and might drop some more. Who knows? So they're going to be on the road more for the NCAA tournament. Now, obviously, they want to take care of the outright championship. Houston's a bubble team, so we'll see. We'll follow that next weekend. Last game, well, at least for 4 of the seniors that we are aware of at home, Tylee Marmon, Anne-Marie Watson, which by the way, you can find Bryson's feature on Anne-Marie Watson from earlier this year on Black and Go Banneret. Moravec, her last match at home as well as Kat Wesselich. We don't know the status in the future about Amber Olsen and McKenna Melville. They're both seniors. They have an extra year of eligibility, but both are undecided what they've decided. In fact, McKenna told you that, Bryson, when you spoke to her on Wednesday.
Yes, she did, and Dagenet confirmed it after the Temple game, that there are still things that are saying that, quote, need to be weighed out, or opportunities to be weighed out along those lines. So, yeah, but honestly, I think irregardless of if Melville or Olsen decide to stay or go, the fact of the matter is that this season is going to be the last one with all 4 of these women that I mentioned that are making history for this program, that are on the same team together. And so I would always say that, what better time to capitalize on having these players than just going out right now and doing it. So as much now, of course, McKenna Melville and Amber Olsen absolutely amazing at what they do. McKenna Melville, especially, leading the country in kills and points last week checked. So, but the fact of the matter is that all 4 of these women are on the same team together. So at this point, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, if they stay or go. That is a question that we can answer later.
Well, and this is the new college. This is the new life in college athletics. It's kind of like free agency, So, and I don't blame them. Everybody should evaluate all their options, either from an academic standpoint, from an athletics, a playing standpoint. This is the new norm in college athletics, not just football, basketball, every sport. So that'll take, and that's why, to me, Bryson, it's about now moment. I don't think about, hey, what about next year and this year? You just don't know what to expect. You can't predict the future. Worry about what you have in the present. And hopefully for this team, I know in talking to those players and that staff in the past, there's that hunger to get, avenge that high point loss in the opening round earlier in the spring. And I think they feel they can make some noise in the NCAA tournament. They can do it fairly, and that's the expectations. It's early, and I think from fans as well.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think that this team certainly has the capability of doing that. Narissa Morovic, for instance, I mean, she actually had a really good offensive night. Normally, she's a very big, very emphasizes blocking, but today she actually did very well on offense. She had the second most kills against Temple with 7, including the one that ended the match, which was quite amazing. And she is now 2 blocks away from passing Tyra Harper on the all-time career blocks list, something that Amory Watson did back in September. So that is going to be something that to watch out for Tulane. And then McKenna Melville just doing McKenna Melville things, getting a double-double, 10 kills, 11 digs. But what's interesting is that Dagenais was actually trying to move a lot of players around and get a lot of players some playing time this time. Look, I have the stat sheet right here. Mackenzie Chambers got to get into the match. Got in the match. Heidi Bondi got some time. Stella Gicardi got some time as well. So Dagenais was really trying to get a lot of people in the game, and Melville was taken out a few times, and yet McKenna Melville still goes out and double doubles. And speaking of, Morovic went 7 for 7 on her.
Right.
So yeah,
they won easily. It
was a really, really great game. And by the way, did you know what score they won set 2 by?
Yeah, 25-2. Yes,
25.
I heard Jeff posting all
like,
yes.
So I did some research on that, and I was out talking with Callie Hebert, who is the SID for volleyball, about this as well. And the last, and according to research, make sure it's on in the record book, the last time that UCF had anywhere near a set like this was in Todd Dagenais' first season with the team in 2008, when they beat McNeese State in the first set 25-8 or 25-5. I'm sorry.
We'll see how all that plays itself out. Man, you've turned into a volleyball monster there. I have to deal with Jeff talking volleyball, not dealing with you on that. All right, volleyball will get going.
Hey, I can't help it if it's a great game.
I understand, but let's we're going to still talk. Obviously, we're going to wrap up this edition of Night Shift, but we're going to do a little head to a sport that I care about a lot, as you care about, baseball, softball season just around the corner. We got questions from on those sports, and we'll address some of it here on this edition of Night Shift. Of course, we will be back on for South Florida. Make a note, Black Friday after the South Florida game. Make sure you subscribe and like us there. And, of course, regular podcast this week. Hopefully a little earlier on the site as well, blackandgoldbetterhead.com. As far as, of course, you can listen to Night Shift now and the Black and Gold Betterhead on your favorite podcast devices. Fall ball just kind of ended for both baseball and softball. You touched on this a little bit, Bryson, but we didn't have time to go kind of across an examination. More importantly, we didn't have time to talk softball, which agitated me. So I have questions. We've got questions about pitching for both teams. Fans have asked questions here. Unger to Unger. We have questions from Roxy about pitching. So here's what we're going to do real quick, because I don't want to spend too much time. We're just going to give them a little taste. We're going to kind of cross-examine. So we'll address both baseball and softball at the same time, position by position. And then if there's a lingering question we could ask each other. In fact, we got a baseball question right here. Fallen hero, the base legend. Could baseball make the tournament this year? We'll get to that. Good question. Let's start with starting pitching, though, because that's a question that we've been asked about for both sides. Remember, softball loses Aaliyah White. It's the record holder in wins. Baseball loses Colton Gordon, who got drafted by the Astros, among other arms, right, Bryce? So let's start with that. Address the starting pitching at UCF in baseball.
All right. Well, the biggest thing is that we're going to be getting Hunter Patterson back. I think that's good because he provided a stabilizing force late in the season last season after Colton Gordon got hurt, and now he's probably going to have to do that again because he's the only starting arm to return. Zach Hunsaker, from what I've heard, is hurt right now, but even then, he was only called up as a starter when Colton Gordon got hurt. So he's not really a starter by trade. So basically, Coach Lovelady essentially has to build this rotation basically from the ground up with just Patterson, which is good to have, but you still need to fill 3-4 more spots. So they brought in Connor Stain and William Saxton, who I've heard praise from Coach Lovelady and Patterson. Both said they were really great, and looking at them in fall ball, they performed quite well. However, obviously, they're transfers, so they were a bit unknown quantities back in the beginning of the offseason, and so David Litchfield was actually worked out as a starter this fall, and so he is an option that the Coach Lovelady said that they could go with in the starting rotation, which is very interesting. Cameron Crane started the away. Lovelady told me started the away game, fall ball away game against Stetson, so he is an option as well. But I would say those 5 pitchers, I think you can make a pretty good starting rotation with those 5 pitchers, and also to make sure to beg the question of Litchfield, you're muted, Eric. It begs the question of who's going to be closed if Litchfield is starting. Right. And I have it on good authority that Zach Bennett or Ben Vespi will likely fulfill that role. But so far, Lovelady seems to be pretty good with this rebuild pitching.
And this is the position, in my opinion, right, Bryce? Would you agree that this is the most? Oh, there we go. I lost power there for a second. You hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
I think this is the most important part of the aspect for UCF baseball this year. Answering Fallen's question, will they make the tournament? It's going to depend on the quality of the pitching they get.
Yes. Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, looking back at the American Athletic Conference tournament, and the pitching depth, the starting pitching depth was not there for this team to win. They remember they had to face East Carolina a second time, and they had to use Hunter Patterson for that game. So not the ideal thing you want to do, but that's what they had to do in order to get to the championship game. However, because the rest of the stars were tired, they had to throw out A.J. Jones in the championship game, and there's really no two ways about it. He wasn't having a very good season. So the fact that you had to take a starter that wasn't having a good year and put him in the conference championship game, it's no wonder why UCF had to just fight and claw just to get as close as they did at the end. But in the end, it wasn't enough to beat USF. So basically, I would say that's the issue that this team is going to need to address in order to do well in the conference tournament and likely make the NCAA tournament as well, is make sure that the pitching staff is healthy and also has a lot of depth to it. And so with those 5, I would say with those 5 pitchers, plus perhaps a healthy Hunsaker as an emergency option, I think we could possibly see, I think that's an issue that will be addressed. So that's good.
Softball has similar questions. I think Gianna Mancha will be your ace. She was the number 2 behind Aaliyah last year. She beat Arizona in a shutout last year in the regular season as well. Pitched started in the postseason NCAA tournament. She's the vet. She'll go. They got to, after that, I think is going to be the interesting question. You're not going to replace Aaliyah White with one arm. I just don't believe that. So the question is, what's the production going to be like from the number 2? Well, they've got to transfer from East Carolina lineup, which is unique itself there, Bryson, because it's somebody that's got experience pitching in conference and has experience pitching, has a good rubber arm, and is really, I think, will be their number 2 arm moving forward, I think, for this season. And if she could be effective, that will be something that will really work out for them in Cam Woodall. Cam Woodall is how they call her. She's a senior, redshirt senior. I think there's got more movement on her pitches since she's arrived at UCF. If that's the case, I think she'll be solid. Then you've got Caitlin Felton, a freshman pitcher, and Grace Jewell, who's in her second year. What do you get out of those 2 arms will kind of tell the story. I think they need production from Grace and or Caitlin to support Cam. And if they can do that, and you can have those 4 solid arms, then they'll be in the mix to win in the conference championship with Wichita State and South Florida. So interestingly, both teams have similar questions in replacing some arms. Obviously, softball has to replace 1 arm, but it's one of the great arms they've ever had in the history of the program in Aaliyah White. So, and that both of those things will dictate whether both teams are NCAA tournament teams. Let's move forward quickly here. Infield. You feel good about this infield in baseball, don't you?
If anything, there's too many great infielders on this team. So Nick Romano is back at first base. He came back for the conference tournament, had a very great conference tournament actually. And I talked to him, and he said that he really wants to be able to keep that consistent success in this upcoming season. So Nick Romano's back at first base. We have John Montez at second. Alex Freeland, who is one of the best freshmen across UCF, best male freshman across UCF sports, at shortstop. At third base, Andrew Brait exited the fall ball game against Stetson here at John Uliano Park, nursing a shoulder issue, and so we got to see Michael Brooks take some playing time there at third base. I talked to Lovelady about it, and we're not really sure exactly if it's going to cause him to miss any time or not. But regardless, he did say that Michael Brooks is one of the standout returners that he's noticed. So even if Brait is forced to miss time because of this shoulder, I think third base will be in good hands with Michael Brooks. There's also Tom Jostin, who has played second base. He got some time as designated hitter in the Black and Gold World Series game. So, but you could easily see him, take.
Well, his bat's going to be in the lineup somewhere. His bat's got to be in the lineup.
Exactly.
Somewhere.
But infield is just one place where he could do that. And then also one name that actually has seemed a very big to stand out of fall ball is newcomer Cole Russo. And he got some time at third base as well, so that's a possibility. But he is also a catcher, so he could possibly see some reps behind the plate this season as well. Lovely even said that Russo will have an important role on this team going forward because of his super utility abilities. So very intrigued to see where that goes. But the infield, I think, is certainly the most stable part of this program. I would say.
That's good and interesting. Softball, obviously, Shannon Doherty's going to be the first baseman at the first base. She's going to be in the middle of the lineup offensively. Jada Cody, I think, is their best all-around player. She's going to be at third base and catch. Interesting to see who sees time at third base when Cody's catching. Shortstop's still kind of a wide open job, I think, as they get into January. I know they like a freshman. They got their Michaela Macario. Could be an option there in short, but they got some options there that I think competition is going to play out. Matchups could play a role in that and who plays short. And then obviously Justine Molina back at second base, I think will be a key factor. They're defensively rock solid there. And again, I mentioned Cody could be playing behind the plate at times. You're going to see a freshman, Ashley Griffin, who's going to catch, could also DP. Watch that name. She's got tremendous power. You got Jules Wilson, who can catch as well. A lot of people have been asking me, people have asked about Carissa Ornelas transferring to Oregon. This is what we've talked. It's a part of this college athletics. She saw an opportunity to go to the Pac-12, which is a big deal to Oregon. Great opportunity, but UCF was going to be fine catching-wise either way because they have a lot of depth there. So that's welcome the free agent market to these days there. So I think they'll be fine. I think shortstop will be an interesting question there. They could be a little young. And then third base when Jada is not playing there when she's catching. Although I think Jada will play the majority of the time at third, but we shall see. Last place, we'll check the outfield. How's the outfield looking for baseball, Bryson?
Well, that is also fairly stable, but there is a little bit of changeover. So, left field, Pablo Ruiz seems to have locked up that job fairly well. He played a lot there last year, did solid job, so expect him back. I would expect him back there. Jeffrey Pena, who Lovelady said after the conference championship game was one of his MLB draft watch list, and yet he did not get drafted. Lovelady did actually talk to me about that and said that, and essentially talked about how he picked himself up after that and has really improved since then in order to gain the attention of MLB scouts for this next draft. And so, but he'll be back in center field. The big thing is right field. The Jordan Rathbone, who is also one of the main home run hitters on last year's team, has moved on to play pro ball up in the St. Louis area. And so the question is, who is going to replace him there? We've seen Trent Taylor get some time out there. We saw freshman Lex Bodeker get some time out there. We also saw Tom Jostin get some time out there. But so as for who I would think is going to get the job, I would say it's Trent Taylor because of one thing. Lovelady was talking to me about how he really likes to have an outfield that has a large radius of play where you could essentially a guy is fast enough where he's able to get anywhere on the outfield in order to make the out. Plus, it also helps with stolen bases. So Trent Taylor has that ability in spades. I've seen him steal some bases in fall ball, and he actually made a quite the acrobatic catch out there in right. So if I had to make a guess, I would argue it's Trent Taylor, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Tom Jostin obviously got there as well. Jostin just seems to be kind of like sort of a Brock Holt type figure, maybe where he's fielding, where he's able to kind of to really slot in anywhere they need him in order to get his bat into the lineup.
Well, I think it's important to have his bat in the lineup, and you hope that you get the Nick Romano we saw in the conference tournament and in 2020. If you get that with Pena and Ruiz, then I think this offense can revert back to what it was in 2020. They were kind of inconsistent in 2021. I think that would be a big positive, especially to help this pitching staff as it kind of sorts itself out early in the season. So,
speaking of Jostin, one highlight that I really would like to bring up is that in the Black and Gold World Series game, he hit a solo home run, only run for his team in that game. And so, but the other team got a run as well. And so that means they were tied after 9. So the tiebreaker wasn't extra innings, but a home run derby. Tom Jostin goes up there and hits 6 home runs in that home run derby. The only night they would get a home run there all day. So Tom Jostin has seemed to have really done a solid job with improving his batting. And he just really had it that day. So one thing I would definitely like to keep an eye on with Tom Jostin is his long ball ability.
And then finally, softball, Denali Schappacher, extra years senior, is going to be in the top 10 in every in a lot of offensive categories, on base over 400, base hits, runs scored. She'll be back probably in right field. I think they got a ton of outfield depth, so that's not going to be an issue. It's just based on matchups, I think, who they're going to play with in that scenario. But they've got a ton of – I think Schappacher you're going to see often in that lineup. A thick kid to watch out to is Janisha Rowe, a transfer out of Florida Gulf Coast. I think she'll be at the top of the order, has tremendous speed. I expect her to lead the team in stolen bases. I think she'll add that element. And then they have other bats too. And then I haven't even mentioned Kennedy Searcy, who's coming back from an injury. If she's back, she was a big force. And when they lost her in 2021, that really hurt their offense. And they weren't the same after that. So they hope to have her back. And then where does she play? Does she DP? Does she play the outfield? She could play shortstop as well. So a lot of moving pieces there for softball as they enter 2022. That felt good, Bryson. That felt good. Go ahead.
Softball. I have a question. So I'm looking at the roster right now, and I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 upperclassmen in general, juniors and seniors on the roster. Yeah. This looks like a very youth-dominated team. So how exactly would you?
It really is a young team, but yet they gained some experience playing last year, making the NCAA tournament. And a lot of people were like, well, they have all these transfers that left. Well, a lot of them are because they're looking for playing time elsewhere. And one of the big juggling acts, especially in softball, is you got to decide, do you keep a kid for an extra year over a kid that you're going to have for potentially 4 years? And coaches will always go with the upside there, especially if it's a kid that they think is better than the kid for a year. And I think you saw some of that. That's what the transfer portal is going to be about. You mentioned earlier with Todd Dagenet said on volleyball why a couple of the players, seniors, are going to transfer to play somewhere else because they just can't play here. There's too much talent. And it's the same thing in softball with the young talent. But you're right. It is a young team roster-wise. And it's part of a nice nucleus here that you hope UCF can make a run here where they could be a consistent postseason team for the next few years. I like their offense. I like their skill position talent. The question's going to be the depth in pitching. What do they get behind Gianna Montes? Woodall can give them some innings to transfer from ECU. And then what do they get from Felton, the freshman? I've heard good things about her. They could get some strikeouts. And then Grace Jewell. I mean, they have a DeVoe who's a lefty pitcher. It's all going to come down. But you're right. It's a young roster, and it's going to play a very difficult schedule. So they will learn early. As we saw this week, and you can check out blackandgoldbanneret.com, they're going to be playing in Clearwater in the ESPN Marquee Tournament. That's the Marquee regular season tournament. They're going to be playing Wisconsin, Michigan, who's the Big Ten favorites. Tennessee, who's going to be a top 15 team in the country. Texas Tech, Texas, who's going to be a top 10 team as well. And then, of course, Florida State. That's a big rivalry. They'll be playing in Clearwater. The Noles will be an ACC favorite. So not an easy schedule. UCF softball will begin their season at home against Georgia, who made it to the Women's College World Series last year. We're about 85 days away from softball and about 92, 93 days away from baseball season starting. Can't wait. Let's go.
Oh yeah, I am certainly excited, but in the meantime, we are starting to wind down with fall. We have where volleyball, basketball, and football really the only shows in town right now. Even then, volleyball and football are kind of winding down. So. Right,
football's big, and let me this will be my last question before we sign off. Trace Trocco, our good friend, asked this question: what percentage are you confident in UCF beating South Florida? Are you, after this performance against Connecticut, are you super confident? Are you still kind of concerned? Where are you at on a scale to 1 to 100? Where's your confidence level going into the South Florida game?
I'm going to say 75. I think that is a safe number.
What is it? You broke up there.
75. I think it is a safe number to have in this scenario. I think that I think you could argue it could maybe move up or down, maybe somewhere in the 70-ish, somewhere 70, 75-ish. And because obviously USF has had their struggles. They got blown out by Cincinnati. So, but then again, who hasn't? I mean, SMU just got blown out by them today. So I don't know. I mean, the problem is again, true freshman quarterback. It really just depends on how Mikey Keene has the environment. I think a big advantage is that this game is at the Bounce House. This team is undefeated in the Bounce House this season, and I think there's a big reason for that because it's a great environment to play in, and especially when it comes to a rivalry game. So I would put it at a 75% chance because this team has really grew this season. Not having Bryson Armstrong is definitely going to be a bit of a concern for me, I think. So definitely keep an eye on the USF tight end, I would say. But it really, I think it just depends on that and Mikey Keene stepping up to the plate. And he's a true freshman. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. So I think 75 is a 75, 70-ish, somewhere in that range is a good number to have for that.
All right, let's hear from Gus Malzahn and his thoughts on rivalry week against South Florida, courtesy of our good friend Trace Trocco.
Regular season game, season play home, play a rival. It's a short week. That's kind of what always stresses me. We're going to get up early in the morning. The coaches say, we'll enjoy this tonight. We'll have to get ready. They're capable of playing good football.
All right, that was Gus Malzahn. His thoughts on the game there. The good news for him, he's not facing Nick Saban like he's had to in the Iron Bowl. He's going to be facing Jeff Scott, who's had his problems there at South Florida. But nonetheless, you never know what could happen. They've been able to score some points. They didn't show up against Tulane. They got blown out by Tulane, but you never know. Rivalry games, weird things happen. Last year they played a shootout, like 1,000,000 to UCF won there, and people weren't happy about that. People were not happy too. That's the other thing. People were not happy in how that game went down last year, and so you got to win. This is a big game. You cannot lose this game. You cannot lose this game if you're UCF. You lose this game, it will not be pretty, Bryson, in the post in social media.
Well, another big reason that they need to win this game is that the series is tied now.
People are aware of that. Mm-hmm.
So if UCF wins this game for the first time ever, they will lead the War on I-4 in football. So I would say that this is definitely a huge game, as well as the fact that this could very well be the last War on I-4 matchup in the bounce house for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely.
Move to the Big 12 because should they move to the Big 12 in 2023, which seems to be which considering all the other conference realignment moves that have been happening that have confirmed that they're going to happen in 2023, seems like the ballpark they're trying to get to. So if that target date happens, then there's not going to be another War on I-4 football matchup in the bounce house. So this is definitely going to be a huge game. I remember I actually was at the revival of the War on I-4 in the bounce house in 2013, and that was a huge game. I wish I would be able to be there, but I'm going to be with my family in Georgia for Thanksgiving, so I wouldn't be able to make it back for that. But I knowing the environment of the War on I-4 in the bounce house, I am very excited, and it's definitely going to be a really huge game for this team, and I think a really good way to end off the regular season, especially after the season this team has had.
3:30 Friday kickoff, South Florida UCF, perhaps for the last time ever in the bounce house, or at least for a while. I tend to agree with that. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Night Shift. Thank you, Bryson. Enjoy Thanksgiving, sir.
Yes, sir. You as well.
Thank you. Make sure you follow us on all the social media devices, like us on Facebook. Make sure you check us blackandgoldbanneret.com. Bryson's going to have a wrap-up of the volleyball conference championship article up. Nightcap's going to be up. My men's basketball recap's going to be up. Drew Glukov's knee-jerk reaction to the UConn victory will be up. We'll have a ton of coverage leading into the South Florida game this week. We'll have a regular podcast as well later in the week. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page and make sure you give us nice reviews on the podcast device as well as on YouTube, and like us on YouTube there. Give that thumbs up as well. So for Bryson Turner, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift. Knights win over UConn 49-17.